Hello, my name is Andrew Thake. I'm a director with Resourcing Tomorrow. Delighted to be joined today by Wendy Tyrrell, who's the managing director and founder of the Longview. Great to have you with us today, Wendy.
Thanks, Andrew, and really delighted to be here and to talk about topics that are very dear to my heart.
So let's just dive straight in. Given the current global pushback against ESG frameworks, especially claims that ESG is politically biased or bureaucratic, what is your perspective on the relevance of ESG in mining today, and how should firms respond to skepticism whilst retaining credibility?
Sorry, Andrew, I have to stop because my dog has just decided to come and annoy me, and I need to put her out and feed
Don't
her.
worry, we can start again. It's fine. This is the joy of editing. It's great. It's fine.
I'll be back in a sec.
No, Tomato.
Sweetie, I had to stop the interview because sorry about that.
That's no problem at all. Let's go and start again. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, my name is Andrew Thake. I'm a divisional director with Resourcing Tomorrow. Delighted to be joined today by Wendy Tyrrell, who's a founder and managing director of the Longview. Delighted to have you with us today, Wendy.
Thanks, and equally delighted to be here, Andrew, and to talk about topics that are very dear to my heart.
So let's just dive straight in. Given the current global pushback against ESG frameworks, especially claims that ESG is politically biased or bureaucratic, what is your perspective on the relevance of ESG in mining today, and how should firms respond to skepticism whilst retaining credibility?
Great. Well, firstly, I'm not really sure that it is entirely a global pushback. There are aspects that are conspiring to impact the take-up of ESG, and it has been heavily politicized. We could talk about that for ages, but let's not. Secondly, the world has become definitely more geopolitically unstable, and ESG, as a result, is probably receiving less interest and attention in favour of business survival and thriving in light of the current circumstances. But I've been around long enough in the industry to know that volatility and uncertainty are not new for the mining sector. And the industry and the mining value chain have been working on the themes of sustainability, ESG, health, safety, environment, community for at least 30 years. And whilst there's more to do, and there's no doubt about that, for industries like mining, in my view, where capital is applied over the long term, ESG principles will remain absolutely critical. There is skepticism, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom. Firms, to me, that are focused on values and broader value creation will continue to obtain genuine benefit by committing to the principles and approaches of environmental and social sustainability. And it's those firms that build those principles into their businesses who will be successful. To the second part of your question, how can firms respond to skepticism while retaining credibility? I believe it is absolutely vital not to fall into the trap of thinking that ESG is no longer important. And there are a number of reasons for that, and I'll just draw on a couple. Indigenous peoples and communities on whose land mining is targeting are quite rightly demanding respect and to be genuinely included in decision making that impacts them. Communities want to see that they will genuinely benefit from mining, and customers are increasingly demanding that the products that they buy are built on responsibly sourced materials. And investors want to see high quality returns. So responding to skepticism and retaining credibility for me means really genuinely focusing on understanding both positive and negative impacts. And where I think ESG can evolve now is that whilst in the past it may have been focused on risks to firms, when it's better understood as risks to environments and communities and regions, it's those firms who can focus on reducing risks, not harming people, and creating genuine benefits at community level that are most likely to achieve success. So I'll draw attention then to two aspects of ESG that I feel will be absolutely vital for the future of mining and credibility. The first one is development contribution, and the second one is collaboration for problem solving. So, why are these two aspects critical? Wonderful work by authors Owen Kemp and others, published in Nature Sustainability in 2023, showed that more than half, almost 70%, of energy transition metals or materials projects are located on the lands of Indigenous peoples or land connected peoples. So that means that engagement and genuine inclusion in decision making and genuine development outcomes are going to be crucial. And I see that firms that recognize people as a critical underpinning and who seek to genuinely partner with and collaborate to create development outcomes will, and that benefit those communities, firms that strive to enable resilience. It's those kinds of firms who are going to be successful at attracting funding and delivering on projects. And the last point that I will make is that as we're seeing the unwinding of development funding in much of the world, it opens the way for new and interesting collaborations and ways of delivering entrepreneurial support for development for communities, regions, countries, and for value chains. And we as an industry can find new ways to support those entrepreneurial approaches that span communities, civil society, governments, investors, communities and firms. Governments, of course, have a role to play in that too, focusing their energies on practical outcomes. So I feel very optimistic, Andrew, about the future for ESG, despite some of the challenges that the industry faces at the moment.
When we've spoken, you've advocated for moving beyond simplistic binaries of globalization and protectionism towards strategic resilience that accounts for ESG costs in mineral supply chains. How can companies realistically integrate this approach into their sourcing and investment decisions?
Yeah, great question. And firstly, I want to acknowledge how tough it is for procurement folk right now who are grappling with such a fast moving stream of upsets to the status quo. Strategic resilience became a thing we learned a lot about during COVID when supply chains were disrupted. And now we're seeing disruption again, but in different ways. And as I see it, strategic resilience is about anticipating what can happen and having opportunities and flexibility to respond to a range of possible outcomes, and balancing that against the costs of agility, particularly where business continuity might be at risk. And of course, to your question, considering ESG costs and risks. So for that, there are a few key elements. The first is taking a systematic approach to understanding where the opportunities are in the value chain to building resilience, building strong collaborative relationships and partnerships, particularly where it matters most across the value chain, and thinking creatively about how to have options for supply and really thinking through those ESG implications, and ensuring that you've got skilled people who bring diverse perspectives to the supply chain, who understand deeply ESG factors and who are open to entrepreneurial and collaborative approaches. For instance, what can your local communities provide in the way of services and goods, both short-term and long-term? So short-term might be consumables, such as for catering and fuel, and long-term might be for energy. For instance, there are some wonderful organisations in Australia and in Canada, for example, who have Indigenous ownership building solar infrastructure, renewable energy infrastructure on land that's owned by Indigenous peoples, and who would love to supply a proportion of that solar to mining firms. So building those relationships and deep understanding internally between procurement and sustainability is, I think, a way of really thinking differently about strategic resilience. And lastly, I'm still keen to see a greater diversity on boards and executive teams to consider these broader aspects. There are still too many boards that are made up exclusively of men and morms, middle-aged white men, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing that continue to develop as well.
In light of the increasing complexity in reporting standards, how can you help firms discern which frameworks deliver real impact versus box ticking and drive meaningful outcomes at the community level?
Yes, such a great question. When I was at the Development Partner Institute, Julia Baxter, who worked with us at the time, put together a remarkable map of mining related standards. And at that time, I think it numbered around 250, and that was in 2019, around 2019. And of course, that's grown since then. And I'm pleased to see there is some consolidation and more will be needed, much more will be needed. The most impactful way to drive meaningful outcomes is for firms to engage directly with people who are impacted. And I want to point to three quite different examples of standards that currently have an important role. So IRMA, the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and the Aluminium Stewardship Institute. So each is very actively working to strengthen the sectors that they operate in. EITI is about transparency. The Aluminium Stewardship Institute covers the whole of the aluminium value chain. And IRMA is really about mine site certification. So they're quite different, and none of those three are only focused on reporting. But one thing runs as a thread across all three of them. They're sharing power with communities and NGOs. And to me, that is vital as a key to success. So it's built into their structures at each of those three examples that I've given. It's built into their structures from board level to operational level. And there's a lot I could say about standards, but in my mind, the capacity to share decision making is absolutely critical to driving meaningful outcomes at a community level. That's the number one key to success.
You've emphasized mining must listen with humility and openness and be willing to change based on stakeholder inputs. What practical steps can miners take to rebuild or strengthen their social license to operate, especially in regions with past historical community distrust?
Yes, and when we look across the industry, we see a continuum from some great to some not so great examples of companies' engagement with rights holders, with communities and stakeholders. In the very best examples that I've seen, communities and companies engage genuinely and grow together in partnership. And this occurs where people who have rights to the land on which mining occurs are prioritised. There are so many genuine opportunities to work with rights holders where and the alternative is that where where firms, companies seek to fast track or ride roughshod over communities, it always ends in tears. And it's, I think, valuable to understand that it's completely natural for communities to have a distrust of exploration and mining, and to not let that deter firms from having a willingness to work with people and organisations, because there's often fear on both sides of not understanding one another, of saying the wrong things, of misjudging, of a negative reception, of not understanding culture and connection to land. There is often fear, and the only way to tackle that is to engage very deeply and from a very genuine place. So a couple of things that I would say that are really critical. Having the right board and team in place is number one. People who are able to listen with humility and openness, and being willing to understand that your fantastic SMIC new mining or exploration project is likely to create fear in the hearts of communities, fear of the unknown, fear that you will disrespect the culture, the norms, the people, and being willing to prioritize, so really deeply understand what motivates people and what they're looking for, especially those people that are closest to the projects. Those companies that succeed are the ones that start with a premise that people deserve to be safe and to genuinely share in the benefits from mining in their midst, right through the mining life cycle and beyond it. Thinking this through and being willing to share in and acknowledge historical challenges, being open about them, and working through questions that people have. Engaging with investors who share those perspectives. There are investors out in the world who are interested in mining, who also understand and want to understand the risks and opportunities really well, and who genuinely want to invest in projects where they're working with proponents who listen with humility and openness and who are willing to problem solve with communities. So my suggestion is to beat a path to their door. Don't compromise. Engage with those investors. Engage with customers who share your perspectives. And I know that there are companies who are the customers of mining who want to see mining benefit communities as well. And we have a responsibility in our sector to foster those connections and deepen understanding.
One thing that both of us share a common passion about is about encouraging the next generation and the youth to pursue a career in mining. And last year you participated in the Next Gen programme at Resourcing Tomorrow, emphasising diversity and new workforce expectations. How is generational change reshaping community engagement, project transparency, and ESG expectations in mining culture?
I was so thrilled to lead that conversation last year with amazing young people at Resourcing Tomorrow. And I think the program that you've developed is fantastic. And for young people who might be listening, watching, I would encourage you to participate. It's a fantastic program. What really strikes me about young people is the clarity of vision and expectations that I see. And it's so encouraging to see young people who are full of energy and enthusiasm for the industry, but not in any way blinded by it. They have real clarity. They want to see the sector operate responsibly. They want to see a sector that is environmentally responsible, that genuinely cares about the safety of people and communities and genuinely wants to make a broader contribution. So I reckon let's bring on passing the baton. Let's make sure we really take the time to listen to young people and to respect their views, because in my experience, they know what they want, and it's our job as people who've been around for a long time to nurture that creativity and support the goals. We need young people in mining, so let's open the spaces for them to be creative and to make their own contribution and to do things in different ways. That's what young people will bring for us.
Wendy, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We look forward to seeing you at Resourcing Tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be joining Resourcing Tomorrow in December.